morning and welcome to Football League World TV. My name's Ned Holmes and this is the debate show. Today I'm joined by my colleague Marcus Alley to discuss whether Plymouth Argyle are promotion bound under Steven Schumacher. How are you doing this morning, Marcus?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Ned. Nice to be on to talk about one of the feel-good stories in League One. I think nice to see a club really competing with those financial big hitters at the top of the division. So glad to be on to shine some light on the Pilgrims.
As you say, it's certainly been exciting for Argyle fans this season. A strong start. Before we get started, really get stuck in, a reminder, as always, please do like and share this video. Subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube if you haven't already. And of course, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Whether you're a Plymouth fan, a League One fan, or just an EFL fan in general, what have you made of Plymouth's start to the season? And how do you think they'll fare as things wear on? Well, Marcus, our focus today, of course, is on this season, but I want to take you back first to the final day of the 2021-22 campaign. Plymouth's playoff hopes crushed, of course, by MK Dons and particularly Scott Twine, that 5-0 defeat. That was a real heartbreaker, and I guess there could have been concerns among Plymouth fans, to get that close and falter could have a real impact. But there doesn't seem to have been any hangover. 4 points clear now at the top of League One after 14 games. It's been a fantastic start to the season, hasn't it? And an admirable response to what was, as we say, a really heartbreaking finish to last season.
Absolutely. I think it speaks to some really strong leaders and characters, both on and off the pitch at the club. It shouldn't have overshadowed what was a very positive season, just their second since promotion from League Two to come so close to finishing in the top six of what was a very competitive top six in League One as well, was a very impressive achievement. And yeah, obviously on the day, losing 5-0 against a direct rival is going to cause some unrest amongst the fans and yeah, just overwhelming disappointment. But I think the way that they were talking building up to this season, the playing squad and the coaching staff were definitely able to reflect on the season in the right way and not let that carry over. Obviously, Schumacher is at the head of that. They were inside the top six when Rhino left for Preston last season. So, some people would have been arguing it reflected a little bit badly that on Schumacher that they didn't end up maintaining that position. But he was very keen to stress the progress that they'd made. And where their pre-season expectations were compared to how they performed in 2021-22. Obviously, it's quite a young squad as well, but there are some players with quite a lot of appearances now for Plymouth. I think there are some important leaders in that dressing room. Joe Edwards, captain, of course. Dan Scarr tends to be a really important sort of leader in that back line. I think you can look towards characters like that in pre-season, sort of helping the rest of the squad get over that disappointment. And of course, some fresh faces coming through the door has helped them hit the ground running. So, yeah, I don't think at every club they would be able to bounce back in this fashion. So, yeah, I think certain individuals deserve a lot of credit for switching the narrative and yeah, bouncing back and taking the disappointment in the right way.
Yeah, as you said, I think that narrative of we'll go on to talk about sort of their promotion rivals later on in the show, but there were a couple of teams that the likes of Ipswich in Sheffield Wednesday tipped sort of above them for the league and things like that. But I think as the season's progressed, people are starting to take Plymouth, increasingly more seriously as bona fide title contenders rather than just perhaps top six contenders. Marcus, the opening months of the new season have included wins over Ipswich and Wednesday, and of course a draw away at Pompey, who were, I think, unbeaten at the time. More than anything else, have those results against the bigger clubs helped to convince you that they're the real deal?
I think the way that they turned it round against Ipswich Town, live on Sky Sports as well, really laid down a marker to the rest of the division that they were here to be counted this season. Of course, 100% home record so far does really stand out in terms of the division. But particularly coming from behind against an Ipswich side that have been so good defensively since Kieran McKenna came in, just showed the potential of the group. That 2-2 draw at Portsmouth as well. I believe they were in the top two, or Pompey were definitely in the top two when that match was played. And Plymouth were 2-1 up heading into injury time. It was a 94th minute equaliser from Pompey. So yeah, their matches against the top sides have been very impressive. They're not just flat track bullies. Even that winner against Sheffield Wednesday coming late on in the fashion it did seemed to build a lot of momentum. So yeah, the early signs are very, very positive. Yeah, clubs of the calibre of Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich, and where people expect them to finish this season, leaving home park empty-handed definitely speaks to how impressive they've been at the start of the season and the respect that they're now starting to command. I think we're now sort of edging towards about a third of the way through the season, and we're quite a bit past that first initial 10 games where you're trying to suss teams out now, and Plymouth are prolonging the excellent start that they've made. So yeah, a lot of teams starting to take them far more seriously than they were at the start now, and I think those 3 results in particular are definitely one of the key factors in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about those big impressive results, but only fair then to talk about that 5-1 defeat to Charlton, an eye-catching result. It didn't quite sort of kickstart the season in the way the Addicts would have been hoping. Obviously, a big win for them last night, but from a Plymouth perspective, how do you reflect on that one? Is it, nothing more than a bad day at the office? Obviously, there was that sort of quite early red card up when they were already 1 down, and things sort of went from there. Or is there a reason for future concern? Do you see that there's still a sort of slight fragility in the front foot where they play, or is it somewhere in the middle that, something worth considering, but nothing to panic about?
Yeah, I'm not panicking about it too much. Once again, they showed the strength of character to prove that it was just a 1-game blip, and to come back and produce a run they have since has been really impressive. I think to go a goal down and a man down so early on against Charlton in particular in sides of in League One is that they stand out, given how well they keep the ball at times, to be difficult to play against with a man less. Yeah, the Addicts were running a bit hot that day. I think 5-1 possibly flattered them a little bit. Morgan Whittaker was made it a bit more competitive in the second half with a really good solo goal. But I think once again, it just points towards those characters in the dressing room, the way they're able to dust themselves down, work hard for the rest of the week and bounce back at the weekend. Conceding 5 goals on your travels is a little bit concerning. I think it shows that maybe when Michael Cooper isn't quite at his best, that their form can regress a little bit. But yeah, I think Charlton, with the attacking players that they've got and the depth in that area, if you are going to get stretched and leave spaces to exploit on the counter-attack when you're trying to get back into the game with 10 men, they are one of a few sides in the division that can pick you off quite ruthlessly.
We've talked about some of the results then. Let's shift our focus to the person now. Plenty of impressive performers for Argyle this term, the likes of Finn Azaz, Bally Mumba, as you mentioned, Michael Cooper, Morgan Whittaker, Dan Scarr, etc. The list goes on. And do you think, Marcus, that it's the fact that list really does go on pretty long in terms of players that have been able to provide match-winning contributions? I mean, if you look at the sort of squad list this season and the stats, there's not, that standout striker that's been firing in the goals. There's not that sort of midfield wizard that's been creating everything, or really that defender that you feel without them things would crumble at the back. Obviously, Michael Cooper, a massive player, and will continue to do so. But do you feel the fact that contributions have been spread fairly evenly across not just the team but the squad itself is good news for their promotion hopes?
Yeah, hugely so. I think it's a sign of a good team where you share the goals out. They've got 5 players on 5 league goals, joint top scorers. That's Whittaker, Finn Azaz, Niall Ennis, Ryan Hardy, and Sam Cosgrove, of course, coming in on loan from Birmingham City. Mumba's been one of the standout players in the league so far this season. So yeah, it's really healthy to not be too reliant on individual players. I think the same probably can't be said for the likes of Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich, which is something that Argyle have on them at the moment. I think the introduction of 5 subs has really benefited Plymouth. The way that Schumacher's been able to rotate between those impressive attacking players, and will continue to do so with the likes of Mikael Miller and Danny Mayer out injured at the moment, set to come back in. I think that's been able to enable Schumacher to keep them all happy. They're all getting minutes week in, week out, despite rotating them in the starting 11, and keeping that fresh approach has been really tough to defend against, and also giving them plenty of muscle to bring on later on in games. So yeah, I don't think they have the squad depth of the likes of Ipswich and Sheffield Wednesday, but the way Schumacher's managing their minutes at the moment, and keeping teams guessing in terms of what front three he's going to field, and the competition for places that breeds is really healthy. So yeah, it's definitely a huge positive to me for me that they are sharing the goals out, and as you say, not too reliant on any individuals. You can take them out, and the team doesn't lose too much as a collective.
Yeah, you mentioned Mikael Miller there. As you say, he's one of those arrivals that yet to really have a huge impact. But we look back to the summer, the likes of Finn Azaz, Ballymumba, Sam Cosgrove, Morgan Whittaker, Nigel Longwick, if that's the right pronunciation, and Matt Butcher, all signed, all playing important roles in this team. Cosgrove in particular, I think, one where I think the Plymouth hierarchy deserve a lot of credit, a lot outside Plymouth, and probably a lot of Plymouth fans when he was signed, talking down that deal as someone that failed elsewhere, and a lot of fans of other clubs having some pretty nasty words to say about him on socials. But 5 goals in 280 League One minutes now. How do you rate that transfer business? I mean, to me, it's looking like one of the more impressive summers in the division.
Yeah, comfortably right up there in terms of the best recruitment we've seen. 5 loanees and 2 free transfers as well. You don't need to overcomplicate it. You don't need loads of investment to compete right towards the top end. And yeah, that Cosgrove signing has been incredible as well. Obviously, unsuccessful loan spells at AFC Wimbledon and Shrewsbury Town last season. That said, Shrewsbury have been reliant on a strong defensive process to keep them in the division and up towards safe mid-table positions in League One for quite a few years now. Their strength has not been in the final third, so it was hardly a surprise to see them take a striker on loan and for him to not be that prolific. And then, of course, Cosgrove going to AFC Wimbledon. We know the terrible second half to last season. They had, I think it was something like 26, maybe even more games winless from one point until the end of the campaign. So if you look at his sort of failure in those loan spells by a case-by-case basis, it's not as concerning, even from Birmingham City's point of view, probably as well. So bringing him in when Schumacher already knew he had the competition for places with the likes of Niall Ennis, Ryan Hardy, Morgan Whittaker, who can play in that role. Cosgrove is just a different option, adds a point of difference to that attack. So yeah, I definitely didn't expect him to start the way that he has. I was more leaning towards it potentially be a backup player, a plan B option potentially. But no, they deserve so much credit. It just shows if you utilise the loan market very well, use those 5 domestic loan slots with players that can influence and improve your squad, then it's able to elevate the level of a club and where you're competing financially in the division enormously. If they can keep those 5 players fit, then I think they'll go a long way towards staying the course, at least in the automatic promotion race.
Well, the title of this show is very much about whether Plymouth are promotion bound under Steven Schumacher. So let's turn our focus to the attention of the coach now. We touched upon earlier that when he took over from Ryan Lowe that they were in the top 6, they finished outside the top 6. It's probably harsh to put that on a reflection of Steven Schumacher's first season in charge, given the change was sort of midway through the season, and given how strongly the likes of Sunderland, Sheffield Wednesday finished the season. As a whole, how impressed have you been with Steven Schumacher and since he's taken over at Home Park?
Yeah, enormously. Even last season, I think he deserved a lot of credit. It was some incredible points totals we were really seeing in League One to finish 7th or 8th in the league. So to come so close to getting in the playoffs was impressive, and to keep pace with the big clubs, as you mentioned. That he deserves a lot of credit for that. And I think they were able to reflect on that in the right way, despite missing out in cruel fashion. So far, I think he's kind of continued the trajectory that they were on under Ryan Lowe anyway, which of course he deserves so much credit for, having never managed before at senior level, and being Lowe's number 2 and losing someone that he'd worked with for such a long time at Bury as well previously. So yeah, he deserves a lot of credit as something of a rookie manager coming into the position. I'm not yet sure he's sort of improved them compared to the natural path that they were going on anyway. Obviously, I'm not sure what kind of influence he has on recruitment, but he definitely would have had some kind of say, so he deserves credit for the personnel that they've been able to bring in. But yeah, I think he's kind of continued the upward trajectory that Argyle were on. They had a really important summer with quite a big overhaul in the summer of 2021 heading into the start of last season. So to sort of cherry pick and just add players that can make a difference to that side rather than so many wholesale changes this summer would have really helped him. And that continuity and stability that I've had at the club for some years now seems to have really aided his transition into the role. So no, he looks a really promising young manager at the moment, and yeah, someone that's really getting the best out of the group at his disposal.
Yeah, I mean his impressive start to life as a full-time boss at Plymouth has not been without its sort of admiring glances from elsewhere, shall we say. West Bromwich Albion, the latest club to be linked with him. I'd imagine there'll be continued links if Plymouth continue this strong start to the season, whether that's West Brom or elsewhere. Do you think, Marcus, losing Schumacher represents potentially the greatest threat to Plymouth's playoff hopes this season, or are you confident of Plymouth doing what we've seen them do before and sort of bring in the next man up?
Yeah, it's hard to say, really, because if they were to bring in another unknown in an EFL dugout, if Schumacher did depart, then there's an element of unpredictability to that. Obviously, it was good from a Plymouth point of view, and yeah, to see his loyalty with links to the Huddersfield job in the last few weeks, saying that he's happy with the project that he's in right now. Whether the same could be said if West Brom do come calling, I think they can offer probably a different kind of financial package, having recently come down from the Premier League, or more recently than the Terriers at least. But it does seem that he is more crucial to this than maybe we realised Ryan Lowe was. I'm not sure if Schumacher's been working with this backroom team as long as he was with Lowe, so I'm not sure that element of continuity would be there to the same level. So yeah, in terms of whether they can compete with the likes of Ipswich and Sheffield Wednesday for the remainder of the season, Schumacher does seem crucial to that. That's not to say that they couldn't recover and continue this form without him, but yeah, I think that there would be concerns about that, and it would be a huge blow to their hopes to continue the sky high performance levels they've put in consistently so far this season if he did depart to a championship club.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to move on to talk about their form at Home Park in a second. But just a reminder, if you are watching, that we do want to hear your comments. Have you got any predictions for how you think Plymouth are going to fare this season? Do you have them as sort of bona fide promotion candidates? Do you think they're going to slip down below the likes of Ipswich and Sheffield Wednesday? Please do let us know. Well, Mark, as I say, we're going to turn our focus to Fortress Home Park, as it were. 7 wins from 7 games in League One, 13 goals scored, and just the 2 conceded at home. The hardest place to go, do you think, in League One right now? And on top of that, how vital is it that home form continues to those promotion hopes?
At the moment, it has to be the toughest fixture in the calendar, yeah, for sure. Especially after Ipswich and Sheffield leave with no points in the last month or so. A long away trip as well. Often we see some of the more isolated clubs in the division sometimes perform a little bit better at home. But given the platform that they've given themselves at the start of the season, 4 points clear at the summit, we'll have a very nice cushion on whoever's out in 7th place, sort of in that top 6 picture at the moment. They can almost rely on their home form if they can continue that to keep them in that promotion picture for the remainder of the campaign. They're not going to win every game. The 100% record will drop at some point. But I think I've been very impressed with their away form as well, bar a couple of performances. So the form at Home Park is very important and will continue to be probably the bedrock to to them sustaining their promotion push this season. But at the moment, there won't be too many concerns if there is a little drop off, because there'll be so much confidence in the group that they can make up for it on their travels. So yeah, has been a tough place to go for quite a while. And yeah, to go 7 from 7 at the start of the season, I think, yeah, the supporters and Schumacher couldn't have dreamt of anything better.
Yeah, certainly those home park supporters got plenty of value for their money and their tickets this season so far. Plymouth top of League One at the moment, of course, but we're going to look now at some sort of, well, their promotion rivals. Ipswich Town and Sheffield Wednesday, Marcus, were the two bookies' favourites for the top two ahead of this season. You see them as the two biggest challenges for the automatic promotion spot still?
Definitely, yeah. For me, I feel like there is in the table. Some teams have got games in hand, but maybe a significant gap opening up between the top three and the rest of the chasing pack. It's really hard to deny Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich, given the squad depth, the individual quality within those squads, the way they can rotate and bring in players that potentially even clubs in the Championship would like to bring into their starting 11s is something that we haven't seen at this level for quite a long time. So with so long left to go in the season, it's hard to argue that those two can't make ground on Plymouth. That's not to say that I think they're definitely gonna drop off. I think it's been really refreshing start, and if they're able to build on this cushion, this 4-point cushion at the summit a bit longer, then it does create that kind of siege mentality, and it will lift the support base so much to have them competing at the top end for a sustained period. So yeah, I do look to Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich the most still. I think Derby are building quite nicely under Paul Warne, but have probably given themselves a little bit too much to do to really throw themselves in. I think it would take a significant drop off from Plymouth to be maybe in a sort of head-to-head battle for second place or something like that with Derby County at some stage. But yeah, I'm not looking away from Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich just yet. I think, yeah, the squads at their disposal and the two managers that have had a nice amount of time to put their stamp on things now does make them very competitive, even with the way that Argyle have flown out of the blocks.
Sure. I mean, obviously it's a long way to go just yet, but let's assume, Plymouth are still scrapping up there at the end of the season. That they're perhaps, as you say, they're going for second, or perhaps looking around them at who might be in the playoffs. From that chasing pack, the likes of Peterborough, Bolton, as you said, Derby, Portsmouth, of course, Charlton after that recent win, Shrewsbury perhaps even. Which teams among those do you think are going to worry Schumacher and Plymouth the most?
I like the look at Pompey a lot at the start of the season, but winless from 4 now is a little bit concerning. I think they've just had a bit of a momentum drop off since their fixtures have slowed down. Derby would be the one. I just can't quite deny Paul Warne. I know they lost to Port Vale a couple of weeks ago, but there has been an improvement in results, at least their defensive process as well, since he's gone into the club. I like the look of Bolton a lot at the start of the season, but they've struggled with a little bit of inconsistency recently. I think if they can really get going, then they could be a team that we need to keep an eye on in terms of pushing themselves into that conversation potentially. Barnsley again have been very impressive under Michael Duff, but I see them as a side that will probably be competing for a place in the top 6 rather than the top 2. Not sold on Posh defensively. I think they're a little bit reliant on a few attacking individuals. So yeah, I think it might be a case of playoffs for them. So yeah, outside Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich, Derby are the team that I'm probably looking at the most. Potentially Bolton along with them. But yeah, it's as I say, it's tough to deny Paul Warne's side considering what he's achieved in League One over the years. That could be definitely a team to keep an eye on.
Well, just before we sort of ask the big question that's been scrolling along the bottom of the screen throughout, I just wanted Marcus to pick your brain on. We talked about a lot of positives about Plymouth Argyle today. What strike you as sort of the main threats to those hopes of promotion as the season wears on?
Well, losing Schumacher would be one of them. I do feel like they're in a purple patch at the moment. I think the bubble will be burst to an extent at some point in the not too distant future. It's just whether the that will lead to a poor run at season fall away or not. At the moment, I probably don't think it will with Schumacher at the helm. They've scored 28 goals this season from 15.7 expected goals. Not really sustainable. There will be a drop off in that. It just depends whether their defence can stand up when the goals do drop away a little bit to keep them picking up points on such a consistent basis. So yeah, there is more depth in the final third than there is defensively. Dan Scarr was suspended for the trip to Milton Keynes Dons at the weekend, but if they'll lose someone like him to injury, or James Wilson, another important defender, then I'd argue the second string isn't as strong as it potentially is if they were to lose someone like Niall Ennis and then Cosgrove will come in and start more games or something like that. So yeah, potentially a bit of depth in their back line, but yeah, if all those players stay fit, then they should be fine. Also, Michael Cooper, I think maybe at times I've been a little bit reliant on him. He's definitely a player that's contributed to their points total this season already. So yeah, I do look at the defence because I expect the attack to drop off a little bit, and whether that can continue to keep them in games and yeah, to keep their relentless consistency going with their rear guards. So that's one area of the pitch that I don't think they may be as strong as Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich in the final third. They probably are, given the start to the season. So yeah, that's potentially something I look at as something teams can get out over the course of the season, and potentially something that could cause a drop off. Obviously, it's hard to poke holes in it given the way that they've started. But yeah, I think maybe a little bit more defensive depth. That could be an area where injuries do negatively impact them over the course of the campaign.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the big question then, Marcus. How do you see things panning out? Do you think that this season Plymouth are promotion bound under Steven Schumacher?
Tough one, really tough. I would like to wait a few more weeks before I properly go in on this one. I think they're top three bound. So that's whether they end up in the unpredictability of the playoffs or they do hold on for top two. I think this is a really crucial part of the season. We saw Ipswich lose at home to Lincoln at the weekend. Their performance level was still all right. But I think if Plymouth are able to build on this 4-point cushion, it'll be massive for belief. And yeah, of course, would increase their chances hugely. At the moment, given what we've seen, I still can't deny Sheffield Wednesday a place in that top two. I think at times they haven't looked convincing, but been able to grind out results. And I just think the freedom for Darren Moore to almost he doesn't do this, but I feel like he could make 11 changes and they would still be a sort of competitive playoff side, given the strength of that squad. So at the moment, I still want to wait a little bit longer before putting Argyle up above Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich as top two favourites. I think they are a class above the chasing pack at the moment. So I am confident that they'll get a place in the top three. But of course, yeah, it's whether they end up in the unpredictability of the playoffs or inside that top two. So yeah, the bookies have still got them as third favourites for promotion and the league title. I'm still just in line with that. I think maybe in another month or so's time, if they can build that cushion to something a little bit more commanding, then I'll definitely start believing. But for now, yeah, I still feel like Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich might be a little bit too strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a big month ahead for Plymouth, and certainly lots to be excited about for Argyle fans for the season ahead. Well, that is everything from myself and Marcus on Football League World TV today. But there's two more shows on Football League World TV at 1:30. It's the debate. Are Luton Town automatic promotion contenders, with Alfie Burns and Billy Mully on that one. And then at 4 p.m, Sam Rourke and Ben Wignall will be on for the EFL Tuesday night score prediction show. So plenty of good stuff to sort of tune into later today. But that seems me to say thank you very much, Marcus, and thanks everyone for watching.